Good day, and welcome to Nano Ransford's Weekly Wraps. I'm Viv Govender, and as usual, what we'll do is we'll go over some stories of the week that affect you and your investments going forward, as well as the tech/AI segment to the end. The stories this week, we're just going to have two stories. One is the Chinese economy, and the other one is a bit of a take on the State of the Nation address. So we'll look at the state of the South African economy. And in our tech/AI segment to the end, what we'll do is we'll look at Microsoft and Google, some of the moves they made recently, as well as take a brief, examination of the idea of it's not quite AI, but it's tech, the Apple Vision Pro. So let's start off with the Chinese economy. I've been talking to you guys for a long time about this, but the Chinese economy continues to go from bad to worse. Yes, economic growth seems reasonably strong. Yes, we are seeing, all the normal indicators look quite, okay in terms of, performance. But I mean, an interesting fact to note is that as youth unemployment started to increase in China, they recently just basically stopped publishing the results. So the stuff that we get out from China in terms of economic results, to the numbers and so on, often have to be taken with a pinch of salt. Now, the latest thing that they've done is they've injected some money into the stock market to try and boost that stock market up. Temporary boost, however, this is not a long-term solution to help the economy. We continue to see, steps by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, that are short-termists, that do not look at the structural issues behind that economy that are a problem, that don't try and fix the real underlying issues in that economy. And I do think that if you look forward, I don't see that changing. Xi Jinping, as I mentioned many times in the past, is quite old. He's not the kind of leader you would want to have in an economic crisis like this. He's not the kind of leader that's probably going to be coming up with innovative solutions to get the Chinese economy out of the situation. And so things continue to go, like I said, on a downward trajectory there. Now, let's go into depth for our next topic, which is going to be Ransford's State of the Nation address. Our take on the state of the South African economy and what we think the problems are going forward. As I speak now, Solomon Pause this evening is going to be talking about the state of the nation. And he's going to give, his last pitch effectively before the next election. And so this is effectively the last speech, State of the Nation speech of his current administration. Now, currently it looks like the ANC is going to lose its majority. It's still probably going to be the biggest party in the country, but at best we're looking at just under 50%, at worst maybe as low as the low 40s, and some even say it might even break the 40% barrier. So probably looking at about a 45-46% ANC vote share. And this is, of course, a lot of these polls don't take into account Jacob Zuma's latest initiative in the KZN that will probably also take a few votes from the ANC as well. The issue we have here in South Africa is multiple. So in the short term, medium term, long term. So what are the short term problems in South Africa? Short term problems in South Africa are things like, for instance, Transnet and Eskom. Those are the short term issues in the country. We at the moment are in a situation where we have load shedding, and we have things like Transnet, fundamental issues in the country in terms of infrastructure breaking down. I say this is short term because a lot of the stuff can be fixed reasonably quickly. With regards to, for instance, Transnet, the capacity has started to fall dramatically recently, but there's some reasonably good fixes, reasonably easy things that the government could do if it was not corrupt, if there was not the issues of corruption around it. That would give us quite a bit of relief around that. Same thing applies to, for instance, Eskom. Same thing also applies to things that are developing to be a problem right now, such as water supply. I think last week or so, we saw an incredible case then where some young lady was killed waiting in line for water because of a riot that broke out or some unrest that broke out because of issues of lack of supply. That is literally dystopia level kind of issues. It's something that you watch in Mad Max, literally fighting over water. That is not something that you'd ever expect to see in South Africa, but that's where we are. These issues, I think, are short term. We're already likely to see a reduction in load shedding over the next 2 years, not just because of governments fixing the problem, but because the private sector is adjusting. The private sector is getting, figuring ways around it. We are likely to see huge new corporate, solar-powered, energy generation plants coming into play this year alone. And over the next, say, 2 years or so, we are likely to see significant reductions in demand from the corporate sector and possibly even the retail sector as well, as individuals start to put solar in larger and larger numbers. So it's quite possible that last year and this year are going to be the two worst years for load shedding. For Transnet, there are fixes for the issues that it's having, maintenance, a lot of development in terms of stuff that needs to be built for the company, but mostly it's maintenance. I mean, the capacity of Transnet is significantly low below what it should be, and if they could just maintain things at a current level or at previous levels, we would see a lot of the issues disappear. And so that's the short-term kind of issues. The medium-term issues in South Africa include issues such as high unemployment that needs to be fixed, includes issues such as the high levels of inequality that are a problem in the country. And these are things that I think that, it's going to be a bit more difficult to fix. Unemployment in South Africa is the worst of any country in the world. I mean, the second highest country in terms of, unemployment that we look at places like, Djibouti or Swaziland, Botswana, those kind of places. If you're looking at countries that we might want to be like, in terms of unemployment levels, these countries that have extremely high unemployment levels, but they're the countries we want to be like, are in the teens, roughly half, in some cases less than half our current unemployment level. We are in the low 30s in terms of unemployment. Our unemployment level is just ridiculously higher than any other country of our level of development, and in fact, any other country in the world. The only countries that are even close to us are significantly undeveloped countries. So that's one issue. The next issue is the issue with inequality, but that's also a function kind of like the unemployment level, because a lot of the inequality in this country is due to the fact that we have people in South Africa who are living off social welfare grants, which are even the best social welfare grant is usually less than pretty much almost the worst jobs out there. We're talking a couple of thousand rands per month for the old age pension versus the minimum wage in South Africa is close to 5,000 rand a month for a full-time job. If you had a full-time job, you basically be making more than 2 times as much as the old age pension, or for instance the childcare pension and that kind of stuff. So if we can fix unemployment, we'd fix a lot of these issues around inequality, as well as which will have more funds coming to the country to improve infrastructure, to do other things that we need to do. And then comes the major long-term issue in South Africa, and I think that people don't often talk about it, but I think it is one of the key weaknesses in the country. It's the fact that we have this huge unemployment level, and we have more and more people coming into the workforce every year that are not employable almost. And why would this be a long-term problem? Because this is a function of education. And whereas you could fix Eskom in maybe 3 to 5 years' time, you could fix unemployment over maybe a decade. It's going to take you more than a decade to fix education, because the major issue in education in South Africa is the fact that our teachers are not at a level where they should be to teach. That's quite frankly the case. The number of teachers that can pass their own subject at a high grade level or get a consistent rate at their own subject at a high grade level is disappointingly low. Most of our teachers are not going to basically ace their own subjects. How can you expect somebody to teach you mathematics who couldn't get an A in mathematics at the level that they're teaching you at? How can you expect them to teach you economics if they couldn't get an A in economics at the level they're teaching you at? I'm not talking an A in university or an A at a master's level. I'm talking an A at a high school level, and these teachers are not able to do that. And so how can they have enough information to teach you? There's no way you're going to be better than your teacher, unless you're a genius. So that's the long-term issue. And the long-term issue, I think, is one of the most dangerous issues in this country. The unemployment issue is built on this. Maybe some of this stuff around Transnet and Eskom is also built on this, the fact that we don't have the capacity in terms of individuals who are able to go and fix these problems. It's because of the lack of education. And this is a long-term issue, like I said, because it's not going to there's no feasible way this is solved in a decade. There's no way you solve an education issue like this in a decade. Because, like I said, before you even apply stuff to the students, you could apply the stuff to the teachers. It'll probably take you multiple years to fix the teaching situation. And then you're only going to start teaching kids, who are going to graduate maybe a decade thereafter, from high school, and then another maybe 4 to 5 years thereafter from a tertiary institution. So we're looking at a multi-decade issue around towards education. And I think that is the long-term number one issue in this country, is the fact that we have a broken education system that does not serve the majority of the country. Okay. That is our State of the Nation address from Ransford. So let's look at the next thing, the AI segment of this particular discussion or tech segment. A couple of things to be talked about here. Firstly, Microsoft is coming out with more developments around AI, and so is Google. But I want to put a little caveat in here, and I think that this is something interesting to be noted. Microsoft gets like about 5% or so of its revenue from its like cloud AI division. But if you look under the hood of that particular investment here, or the particular revenue stream, what you find is a lot of that money is actually Microsoft money. What do I mean by that? Well, Microsoft has gone out and has basically invested in like a company like OpenAI, and its investment has been in the form of a lot of it in the form of tokens to basically use Microsoft's cloud computing system. What is happening here is that we are seeing Microsoft almost investing in a way that's going to be reflected not as an investment, but almost as revenue on their books. Because they invest in OpenAI. OpenAI basically spends the money to use their cloud systems, and in their cloud system, it looks like revenue. And that is a problem for Microsoft. The problem for a lot of these kind of investments we see from places like Google, Amazon, etc., in terms of some of this AI stuff, is that maybe they're reflecting as revenue in other parts of their business operations. And speaking of Google, we see another example of Google basically having a lack of, competence, rather, let me say, when it comes to customer relationships, when it comes to their systems. They've had the best product for the longest time in search, and therefore they really have not been really required to do proper PR, proper advertising, proper customer relations. And so what we've seen now is that Google Bard, which people are just getting used to the idea that the word for Google's AI was Google Bard, is going to be replaced by Gemini. When you have almost no recognition, you start to build some recognition of your thing. Changing its name to something totally unrelated is not a smart idea. Look at ChatGPT. They had GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT 4.5, GPT-5 coming out next. You hear GPT, you hear Windows 1, Windows 2. We don't have Windows and then doors and then castles and then moats and then different names. There's Windows, you know what the program is, and there's multiple iterations of that. There is the iPhone, whatever number that follows, but it's the iPhone, the iPad, the Galaxy phone. When you have these kind of name recognitions for a product, you do not change the name just because the product is improving. Okay, and so that's one thing. And then finally, I'm going to talk about a little thing that's kind of really doing well at the moment in the tech space, and that is Apple's Vision Pro goggles. A couple of things to be mentioned here. Firstly, those that are using it have two things to say about it. One, it's wonderful. It's amazing technology. It's like being science fiction, being in a science fiction world. The way it functions, how it functions, awesome. The second thing is they don't use it long term. Why? Because it's painful. It's too heavy. You just want to weight on the front of your face, and you just can't use it for hours and hours on end unless you have a neck like a rugby player. So there's obviously some, form changes might need to happen. There's obviously some, developments that need to be done here. But what's important about this is that it does seem to indicate that we're at this point in technology where this VR stuff is really going to be taking off for the next little while. Of course, this is not quite VR. This is AR, which is augmented reality. But I think that's going to be the case for the next couple of years. The success in terms of like reception of the Vision Pro will mean that if it continues like normal technology does, in 3 to 4 years' time, this product that is now going to cost over 100,000 rands, about $3,000+ in the US, is probably going to be selling off for maybe a quarter, maybe less than that in terms of pricing. So comparable to a high-end phone. It's going to be lighter because that's what we expect in technology over time. And we'll be at a point where individuals that are not willing to spend, like I said, 100,000 rands or obviously you're talking about the import costs or $3,000 something for the product will get access to it. And a new form factor like this here could have huge impacts because at the current point in time, the cell phone market is maturing. We are seeing that people are not just automatically buying the new cell phone, but rather waiting for the old cell phone to break before upgrading because they don't really see enough of an advantage for the new program, the new cell phone, to immediately purchase a new one. It does almost as much as the old one does almost as much as the new one, and so wait for the old one to break and then buy the new one. That's the new development. That's something you see when industries mature. When people had first access to PCs, 30 plus years ago actually, in the 1980s, you had to basically buy a new PC every couple of years because the rate of development is so high that in 2-3 years time you're basically too slow to use the most the newest programs, the best new stuff. But if you looked at the last decade or so, people are not doing that. But computer from about 4 or 5 years ago is still pretty functional, and you only want to replace that really when it breaks down. Of course, the new computer will be better, but it won't be better enough to justify replacing it before the old one broke down. And that's the situation in the mobile space. But if you have a new thing like, for instance, this Vision Pro coming out, or the Oculus from Meta, something like that's coming out into the public environment, we're probably going to go through maybe a decade or so of improvements are going to be materially better. Well, even if your old or current generation Vision Pro works in 3 to 4 years' time, you won't be using it because the new version will be cheaper and better than what you currently have. And therefore, you'd be incentivized to automatically buy almost every new version that comes out if you're into it. And I think this is the really cool thing to look at right now, because yes, we've talked about AI a lot, but there's a lot of developments happening in tech right now that are things beyond what we were talking about before. Okay, that we've had maybe a decade plus of where everyone knew what sort of mobile phone looks like. This new one is a bit better, but it's not really a new product coming out that makes things better. You have laptops, we have iPads, we have tablets, we have PCs. All the technology is getting better, but nothing is of a different kind of class that we are forced to look at new things. But look at the Vision Pro. Look at Oculus's Meta, or also Meta from Oculus, with this Oculus program there, with the Ray-Ban glasses that they're developing. You hook that up with AI, and suddenly you have the ability where a individual has access to AI technology on a device that they wear wherever they go. This is going to change how tech functions in the future in a way that we have not seen for well over a decade, since pretty much the invention of the mobile phone. And so, like I said, things are taking off quite nicely in the sector. And we can't just focus on AI, because not only is stuff coming out that's not AI, but it's going to be used with AI in conjunction in ways that we have not even thought of yet. Okay, thanks for having me, and I look forward to speaking to you guys again next week. Cheers.